London has been good to me this time around. Things were they were bound to change when it was found. Sugar never tasted sweeter on my lips. My heart is now intact, and I can find no risk. This is love, yeah, love. Never known true love before. Seen so many counterfeits that left me on the floor. This is love, yeah, love. All will come to those who wait. Time it cannot know the bounds, and error don't dictate.
Well, hello, and a very good afternoon to you. Welcome to Xandermonium, the talk show that gets you talking. I'm Xander Gibb, and on today's show, along with my co-host, Tyhe Egar, I will be breaking down this week's hotter topics, and later on in the show, we'll be taking your calls on the subject of infidelity. More to come in a mere moment. So as per usual, you can interact with us during the show in the chat room at the bottom of the show page. Keep scrolling down. If it's not letting you join in, it's because you have to join the Blog Talk page with either Facebook or Twitter. You just have to simply click one button and it will let you join in. You can also call us. Our number is 347-884-9061. That's 347-884-9061. If you have a comment or a question, you can also tweet us. My Twitter handle is @XanderGibb, XanderGibb, capital X, capital G. Don't forget that little @ symbol at the beginning. And you can also tweet Tyhe. Tyhe's Twitter handle is @TyhePaulEgar, TyhePaulegar, capital T, capital P, capital E. Tweet me or Tyhe if you're too shy, and we will make your point for you. Oh, yes, we will. And now it's time for Xander's Soapbox. If you want to get on your soapbox, you can do that by emailing me at Xander@XanderGibb.com. That's Xander@XanderGibb.com. Oh, yes, indeed. So change is something that most people find difficult, whether that be in the weather, a new job, a new apartment, or a new partner, or even a new car. And as one of those people who finds change difficult, I have to plan things so intricately so that I can control the change and minimize its impact upon me as much as I possibly can. Now, sometimes this is nothing but impossible, as change can come totally out of the blue and knock you right off your feet and onto your ass. Now, while we're trying to get up and say what happened and scratching our head, the change has already taken effect. Now, as I get older, yes, folks, I am getting older. Unfortunately, I tend to actually deal with change better than I ever have. Now, some say that maturity is a great contributor to this. I say it's just that I trust God more nowadays, and that I live in faith and not fear. So some things, when you actually think about them, are actually nothing more than irrationality and are a clear mathematical equation. When I used to live in the city in a first-floor apartment, I would have the windows open at night in the summer. Just as I was about to drop off to sleep, I would have a little freak out thinking, oh my God, what if someone climbs in through the window? And believe me, they would be more shocked and afraid than I would, I assure you. Now, I then think about the law of averages. No one had ever climbed into my window, unfortunately, so the chances of someone actually doing it were pretty slim. So my fear was irrational, and in my tired state, I was far less rational and unable to process the information around me. Now, this got me thinking that fear is actually just our mind's way of not fully processing the information at hand, which actually soothed me somewhat. Go figure. Now, living in faith and not fear is not so as easy as it sounds, but the more you do it, the easier it gets. Now, trust is the key, but so often we play negative tapes in our head which inhibit our faith, not just in God, but in ourselves and in life in general. Are you living in faith or fear? It's a very simple choice. That was Xander's Soapbox for this week. If you'd like to come and get on your soapbox, you can email me at xander@xandergibb.com. That's Xander@xandergibb.com. Now, talking of change, don't forget, in a couple of weeks even, we're moving to our new time and day. We're going to be coming to you on Saturdays, 1 p.m. Pacific time, 4 p.m. Eastern time, and 9 o'clock in the UK. So make a note in your diaries. Also, for the next couple of weeks, because of daylight saving hours, we will be coming to you in the UK at 9 o'clock instead of 10. That's 9 o'clock instead of 10 because our clocks went forward here in the United States this morning, so we lost an hour of sleep. So if I'm grumpy, you will know why. Also coming soon, we're going to be changing our platforms and moving to an audio and video show. So I better get my roots done. Oh, yes, indeed. You were all thinking that, weren't you? Yes, I'm sure. Okay, so this week's show is sponsored by Big City Karaoke, #1 in the provision of karaoke services in the tri-state area. You can find them at www.bigcitykaraoke.com and tell them Xander sent you. So joining me to break down the hotter topics, the issues that matter, is my co-host, broadcaster, writer, and fellow Glaswegian, Tyhe Paul Egar. So join me in welcoming back to the show the fabulous Tyhe Paul Egar. Hey Tyhe, how are you doing?
Hello, I'm well. I'm insane, and I'm talking.
You're insane. Is your website still driving you mad?
Oh my God! Don't even mention the word website. I'm still no further on. Well, I'm a little bit further on. To insanity and more medication, and I'm getting hints now from Philip.
Right.
Oh, no.
Philip, as in Philip in the chat room?
Yeah, sorry, Philip in the chat room for people who are not in the chat room. It serves you right for not being in the chat room. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I find it very difficult to look at the chat and to read the audio cue and watch the sound levels and chat. I mean, I know I'm brilliant, but, you know, there are limits. Hello to everybody in the chat room. Welcome to the show. So what exactly is bothering you today, Tyhe? Is it because we're going to be talking about infidelity and you're going to have to share some of your secrets later on?
No, do you know what? I've been thinking, right, because also I'm really boring. I've only had 2 long-term relationships in my life. I have slept with less than 20 men and I'm 48 years old. How sad is that? And I came out when I was 15. How tragic is that? Although I'm looking at Nova Cork and getting a bit sweaty. But it's true. It's true. So 2 long-term relationships in my life. One was 5 years and one was 9 years. And was I unfaithful? No, I wasn't nearly.
Wow.
But I did find out that my last relationship that was for 9 years, and I'm not going to mention his name, but we both knew him obviously well. I was with him when you and I met. He told me years after we separated, because we were still friends for quite a long time before we left each other's lives, that he wasn't faithful to me one night. And he said it very casually, sort of ha ha ha, one night, because it was years afterwards. He somehow thought that was okay. And at the time I was too tired to be bothered, really. But it was interesting that he thought it was okay to be so casual about it. And I thought, all right, okay. So it's just as well that I did end that relationship. I think some people are very blasé about infidelity. I mean, we're going to talk about this a lot later on in the show. But I'm always amazed when people, like, when friends say, "Oh yes, I'm having an affair." It's just like, "Oh, I just went to McDonald's and bought a Big Mac." It's like, it's also casual nowadays, and you would think that it would be something that people would be ashamed of rather than kind of broadcasting to the world, Yeah, but having said, actually, right, so I'm not a hypocrite. Having said that, myself and my last partner did have 2 menage a trois relationships, and they were relationships. as in that the third person was involved in in an emotional relationship with us. It wasn't a one-night stand. So,
right.
How very European.
Yes, absolutely. But
so,
I think that's a totally different kettle of fish. I know that in some relationships they have this, what's the terminology? I can't even think. It's open relationship. We have an open relationship, which basically means they go off and sleep with anybody that they want to.
Yeah, but we never had that. It wasn't an open relationship. The three of us were emotionally involved with each other. So two of us didn't disappear one night or go off with somebody else. The three of us were involved with each other.
Right.
And I know people have a hard time getting their heads around that. But it's quite complicated when you're in that relationship. And usually they end quite disastrously, which they did. So, if they work for other people, good for you. I'd never criticize anybody's relationship as long as they're honest, I think. I was
actually in an open relationship for some time. I was just open. He was going to leave basically, but I had to kick him out in the end. So, excuse me. Let's take a look at our first topic of discussion today. Now, I don't know how much of this is kind of like filtered through to the UK. But Democratic frontrunner Hillary Clinton's email scandal escalated this week when a key member of her team sent several angry emails to a group of journalists on Tuesday night. The messages criticized the source for being a lying liar, which I find a very odd terminology, and what the aide described as a reporter's cockamamie theory. So the heated exchange followed the growing controversy over her use of a private email address for official business when she was the Secretary of State from 2009 to 2013. Now, allegedly, this is the same email address she used at the time of the Benghazi scandal when Chris Stevens and several other American citizens lost their lives. Now, Clinton's team has insisted her use of the private email complied with the rules and did not interfere with her record keeping. However, it still broke the rules and put the country at risk, allegedly. So President Obama stated recently that the first he knew of this situation was when he heard it on CBS. So great to know that Baz is on top of things once again. So what is your initial response to this, and how do you feel, part two of the question, how do you feel that the British contingent would react if they found out that the Deputy Prime Minister had been doing this kind of thing too?
Well, initial reaction is, oh, look, politicians not learning yet again.
Right.
I have to say it's not particularly news over here, but only, I think, really because, well, two reasons. One, we don't care, and two, we're coming up to the general elections here in the next next couple of months, which
right.
are, of course, massively important. I mean, not just because usually, obviously, they're very important, but here now it's massively important because of, recently the yes/no vote for Scotland, but also now it's massively important that we that we hopefully get the Conservatives out. Anyway, there's lots of things, let's not get into the politics of the UK right now, but it's very, very important shifts coming here. So we don't really, to be honest, care that much about what's going on in America at the moment. Having said that,
right.
obviously being part of Xandermonium, it's my job to care and to make comments. So, so as I said in the beginning, how ridiculous. I'm so surprised at Hillary Clinton, really, being this monumentally stupid, really. It's all just fraud and lies, isn't it? But calling somebody a lying liar
right.
is apart from being appalling grammar, is just really childish. But using private emails for business, God. So, is that fraudulent or just misleading? How dangerous is that? I suppose from one point of view it can't be monitored, so it's fraudulent, but also it's very sneaky, isn't it? But we know now, don't we? Have we not learned that all politicians cannot and must not be trusted? As far as Obama, I think he should be taking my medication, frankly. The man has lost the plot. He's gone completely off the rails.
Well, I was hoping you were going to bring it along to share tonight, Ty, really, because I could do with something today. It's not a glass of wine. It's a few uppers. I mean,
I'm not to mine her up as more balances.
Right. I mean, I've always been pretty pro-Hillary, and I think that this is the concern for me. When you are in it's one thing in business, but it's a totally another thing in government to be using your private email, because I think that the whole idea of the fact that emails can be hacked is kind of worrying. Now, there has been the accusation that this was the same email that Hillary was using when I can't remember what year it was. I should be slapped for not being able to remember, but when Benghazi happened, and they had the intelligence to actually prevent that happening, but they didn't. They didn't prevent that from happening. Now, if she'd have used a private email, I'm not sure it would have actually made any difference, because the issue was that they didn't act on the intelligence. I have to just say that Kathy just said in the chat room that she would have had sex with Bill, and that she loves Hillary. So go figure.
Well, yeah. And I've commented, just make sure you have a good dry cleaner, Kathy. But it all goes hand in hand, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Make sure you wear that freezable dress, Kathy. No?
Yeah, but that's the thing, though, isn't it? I wanted Hillary. I mean, I would have loved to have seen Hillary become the first female president as well. I thought she showed. She just seems really honest. She was a breath of fresh air.
Right.
And let's face it, she was the driving force behind Bill Clinton. But now from what I can see and what I've seen, she's just become another lying, foolish politician when she did lie, didn't she? She said she was involved, she was supporting this, that, and the other, and she was present at certain places when she wasn't.
Right.
And it all proved to be lies. I mean, it's just so sad.
I think Phil hit the nail on the head in the chat room a couple of minutes ago when he said that they all lie, and they do. They kind of lie to cover their own asses, and to me that's a concern, because at the beginning of his tenure, at the beginning of his term of office, I'm sorry, I'm just reading something in chat that's hilarious. In the chat room, they're obsessed now with having sex with Bill Clinton, and Kathy just asked Joe, would she have sex with Bill, and Joe went, today. But I'm sorry, I lost my chain of thought there. I've at the beginning of the Obama administration, one of his primary points of action was that he assured people that there would be transparency, and it's an unfortunate thing that in any political office that the transparency issue goes out the window, because they say they only tell us what they feel that we need to know, and that's kind of concerning, because I think that we informed, it's better to be informed and know what the helicopter is going on, because otherwise, how can you make a decision without all of the information?
Well,
and I think the voters need to know.
Absolutely. I mean, you don't tell me if there is a meteor flying towards the Earth that's going to be a life-ending event, because there's no point. Do you know what I mean? But I have every right to know that what is going on, if there's an act of terrorism, or if politicians are stealing my money, or they are like the bank fraud, etc. That when politicians have made illegal moves, then they should be prosecuted. These are things that they have no right to hide from me, and these are things that I have every right to know about.
Exactly.
And they should be held accountable, and they have no right to walk away from these things unscathed. And it's about time that we held them accountable, and it's about time they were prosecuted and jailed. So all that needs to change, and it's ridiculous that these things we walk away and we allow these things to happen like we have no power over them. So as we've said many times, and we're going to repeat ourselves, but we need to make these changes. We need to insist on these changes. But as far as transparency, then, how many of these politicians have second jobs and they're not paying? I mean, we've just found out here.
Oh, exactly.
There are 2 politicians that have had to just step down because they do have second jobs, and they're saying they can't live on the salaries they're on. I'm so sorry. You can't live on £75,000 a year. It must be dreadful.
I think I could live on £75,000 a year quite comfortably. Thank you very much. I mean, I want to touch a little bit for our UK listeners on what's going on kind of in the UK. Now, I think every administration, whether it be in the United Kingdom or in America, they make all these promises. They say we're going to do A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. And by the end of it, they're doing something totally different. And this is the concern for me, that there is no accountability with anybody in politics. Any politician is not held accountable. I think at the end of any term of office, they should sit them down and say, this is what you promised to do. This is what you said you would do. This is what you actually achieved, and this is the shortfall. But why should we carry on having senators and members of parliament carrying on in their jobs for years and years because their father was somebody important and their grandfather was somebody important, but they're doing a crappy job? I mean, there has to be a level of accountability. And it shouldn't just be at the point of elections. I mean, all the stuff I've heard about what's going on with this a-hole that you've got in charge over in the United Kingdom right now, selling everything off, kicking everybody off benefits. I mean, it's fair enough to kick people off benefits that shouldn't be there, but disabled people that have had lifelong disabilities, and they're saying get a job. And to me, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Well, absolutely, but I mean, it's getting worse as well. Because they're now kicking more people off benefits, and more politicians are claiming money, for different things. But this is why this general election is so important, because we need to make these huge changes. I mean, thank God I live in Scotland, to be honest, because I'm hoping very much that there will no longer be a Labour there'll be no longer a Democratic or what's your other
Republican
real force in Scotland anymore after this general election. The SNP will have a much more powerful say here, because there have been so many changes here, and so many voices here have said enough. We've had enough of you. But that will happen, which is why, of course, a lot of the political news at the moment in the UK is being drowned out by simply what's going on here rather than what's going on around the world. Although, of course, that's still news. We're still hearing what's going on around the world, but everybody's really focused on this at the minute, because we have to make changes here. People are starving to death. People, there are more food banks here than there ever been. People are living not just on the poverty line, but so low below it they can't see it. And it's got to change. And the corruption is now a way of life. It's absurd. That's why all these things have to change.
Here's one of the major concerns, and we've talked about this a lot on Xandermonium, that basically the cost of living goes up every year. And for those people that are lucky enough to get a pay rise every year, the pay rise is not in line with inflation. So who makes up the shortfall? And there are some people that are earning minimum wage, and minimum wage is really not reflective anymore. I mean, last year, people who worked in McDonald's were saying, or some burger place, were saying that they should get $15 an hour, which meant, I think they were saying that it meant that the burgers would need to cost like $10. They need to double the cost of the burgers in order to do that.
Yeah, but also the people here are getting kind of 1% pay rises when the cost of living has gone up something like 7% or 8%. So people are not, it's not balanced in any way. But then they're saying, oh well, obviously people are still shopping and it's not looking like it's making any difference. Well, that depends on what you're balancing it against, really, So, but anybody can throw figures at you, and anybody can go out and do a poll, and when they say, "Oh, this is looking better and that's looking better," you've got to look at the people who are being funded to make that to carry out that poll. It's like somebody saying, a particular chocolate bar is the most popular, and then you look at who's paid to have that poll done, and it's usually the people who make the chocolate bar. So it's never accurate, and it's never honest.
No, absolutely. But I kind of it makes me wonder what the answer is, because they've said, just to take that example of how much they would need to charge for a burger to pay people a living wage. People would refuse to pay $10 for a burger, and so it's kind of, I don't know, it's just a kind of a vicious circle, really. And when I was growing up, I used to hear my grandparents sing about the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer, and the gap in between getting bigger and bigger. I just wonder how it will ever change, and even if it will ever change. It's rather concerning.
It won't if people don't change their attitude and pay attention, because that's what the Conservative Party here want. They just want rich and poor. They don't want anything in between. And it will get to the point where basically if people aren't working, they don't earn money. And I don't think the Conservative Party have any problem with people being on the streets not earning a penny. I don't think they have a problem with that. I don't think they have an issue at all about people starving on the streets. I don't think they would lose a minute's sleep over that.
No. And I think I just think the concern is that these people that think that it's okay and that it's adequate have never ever had to do this. Do you remember about 15 years ago? I remember when I lived in England. There was a TV show. It was like a documentary, and they got this MP, which is like the British equivalent of a senator, to go and live in a studio apartment and live on benefits. And he did that, and he said he did that quite adequately. But what they found out afterwards that they didn't take away his credit cards. He was able to keep his credit cards. So to me, it was a totally useless exercise.
Oh, yeah.
Because anybody could live in a studio, and anyone could do it for a couple of weeks or even a month. But try doing that month after month, year after year.
Yeah, they've done it since as well, and it was an absolute nonsense. They've done it, and they only had to do it for 4 weeks, and of course it's nonsense. Of course anybody could live off that for a month, because as you're saying, you're not running out of funds. You're just like, well, I've got to do this for 4 weeks. That's easy. Anybody could do it.
Right.
But you're right. Of course, if you have to do that for 6 months or 12 months or year, it's impossible, and you start to literally starve. I mean, we've had people on TV, being interviewed here in the last 6 months. And it's been single parents having to make the choice. They've had to go without a meal to feed their children. They've had to basically make the choice of, do I pay the electricity bill or do I eat? Do we have 3 meals a day or do we pay the electricity? Do we pay this bill or do we eat? And that's in 2014.
Wow.
And these are single parents who are working, who are not scrounging off the benefits. These are not some ridiculous propaganda that the government would like to have you believe. All these are people scrounging, and not making it, and not wanting to make any changes in their lives. These are genuinely people who cannot make ends meet because of the situation that the government have put us in, and they're actually making choices about eating or paying their bills. So. And this is austerity is what the government call it. So we're going to have to make even more cutbacks, and that's what we're going to have to do this year as well. I mean, the council here are looking at making another £20 million worth of cutbacks, and it's just not possible to then expect services not to
I
be
disagree with you, Tyhe. It is actually possible, and I'll tell you where they should start to make the cutbacks. And the salaries of these fat cats that are supposed to have our best interests at heart. The members of parliament and the senators that sit on their fat ass and do nothing whilst complaining and saying we've got to make cutbacks. Let's start the cutbacks with their salaries and their expense accounts, and let's see how they respond to that.
Well, sadly, that's not going to happen, is it? That's the old saying, isn't it? If you started with them, changes would make really, really, really fast progress. But it's not going to happen, sadly.
It is a concern, and I think that while they feign interest and feign, caring, they don't kind of do enough to, because I'll give you an example. Margaret Cho was saying last year about how depressed it made her that all these people were homeless and that nobody had carried on the work that Robin Williams had done for the homeless. So she got off her ass and she did something about it. Now, to me, that is, she's not a politician. She's not somebody, she is someone in the public eye, but she didn't have to do that. She went and did it to effect change, and now now that that's kind of carried on. But when people say that they're concerned about something and do nothing, it kind of sickens me, really. It really does. It sickens the hell out of me.
Well, that kind of, but also, I mean, that sort of leads us nicely on to the next section, doesn't it? About people getting up and saying, "Oh, let's make changes for human rights, etc." It's all very nice talking about things in the heat of the moment, or to get to bring the press to you to say, "Look what I'm doing," when in reality you're doing nothing. Because that's what's happening on a world scale, on a world platform. Very little is happening about anything, really. People are just saying, "I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm doing the other," and also pointing the finger, I think, at other people and saying, "Well, they're not doing anything. What are they doing?" Which again we've spoken about. If you point your finger at something, if you point your finger across a field, a dog will point at your finger, but a human being will point in the direction you're pointing. So it's all a very misleading thing.
Absolutely.
But I think you were, because your next segment really is moving into Selma, isn't it? And
sorry.
Sorry, I lost the connection. Then I'm back, aren't I?
You are. I don't know what
then. Yeah. No, I thought I died then for a minute. My connection went down. Sorry.
No, I think you're very much still alive. What were you saying?
I was just talking when you were saying about that then, and talking to people about affecting change and what Margaret Cho did, and people talking about Robin Williams and saying, people saying that they're affecting change and not really making it. It just reminded me of what the next section is. Obama raising his voice, and people talking about human rights and making changes, and not necessarily actually doing that, because this was a really important thing, wasn't it? That's taken place, but I'm not really convinced about people actually affecting things. But I'm going to let you lead into that.
Absolutely. So anybody who has just joined us, if you just started listening to the show, you are listening to Xandermonium. I'm Xander Gibb. Did we lose you again, Tyhe? I think we have lost Tyhe again. Let me just check the connection. Yes, we lost Tyhe. So just while we're waiting for Tyhe to come back, I'm going to do the lead-in for the next segment. So today is the 50th anniversary of Bloody Sunday. To the day 50 years ago, officers beat demonstrators for marching for voting rights. Thousands descended on Selma for the anniversary of the landmark civil rights movement event, including President Obama. In Brooklyn Borough Hall, after the march, demonstrators eagerly watched his televised address. They applauded loudly when U.S. Representative John Lewis introduced the president, cheered when he said America requires an occasional disruption, and stood on their feet at the rousing end of Obama's speech. Organizers said the march from Lower Manhattan to Brooklyn over the famed span was intended to remind the world that the struggle for equality for all has not ended. We're fighting now for not just for civil rights, but for human rights, said Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams. The right to housing, the right to employment, the right to health care, the right to not be prosecuted unfairly all those who feel America has denied them. This is your Selma moment. Let's just see if Tyhe is back with us. Yes, he is. Hi, Tyhe. I don't know what happened to your connection. I blame Blog Talk, and I'm glad we're going to be going very soon.
Yeah, well, usually it is, but actually it was Skype, and I knew something was wrong. So I'm really sorry to everybody listening that segment, moving to that segment was a bit shoddy, which is my fault. But I knew something was about to happen, and it was Skype that disconnected me, and I don't know why.
It was Skype this time.
Yeah, so that's why I thought I'd lost you, and I just went over to you. So I'm sorry about that, Xander. I just threw that at you, but I was a bit confused as to what was going on, and that's why I knew what was. The Skype was throwing something at me, and then it just disconnected me, so that's why. So hello, sorry, I'm back. Yes.
So it's been 50 years since what was deemed as Bloody Sunday. How much do you think has changed, and do you think that we're on the right path with regards to I hate this term, race relations, but it's more about equality for all, as I said in the in the preamble to this section?
I think. Well, no, we've got to say that the huge changes have been made in as far as equality or inequalities are, and racism and people's attitudes towards racism. Massive changes have been made, and I think young people are growing up in much better integrated social. Or should I say much better social integration, would be me, I'm always having to go at people's grammar, in much better socially integrated areas now, and there are much better education on ethnic education. Sorry, I've lost the grip of the English language altogether now. So I think things have vastly improved, but unfortunately, on the other hand, we still have those absolute morons and monsters out there I suppose we always will have in everything, but who sadly are still out there, who will always think, that white supremacists. I don't know why they're still around or why they're so afraid of anybody who isn't white-skinned. I've never really truly understood that. Although I listened, and I do, I've watched, and I watch documentaries and think, okay, right, tell me what it is that you're so afraid of. And this idea, when they start talking about they and them, and they are going to take over the world, and I think, well, I hate to upset you, sweetie, but they were here first. But, the cradle of life is if you want to get into it, is the cradle of life is kind of Africa in those kind of areas. We all climbed out the primordial soup, that area of the world. We didn't start off white-skinned. So if you're really going to get technical about it, we are, white people are the they. We are the afterthought of creation, the white skin, So if you're going to get afraid, you should really get afraid about the fact that you are the afterthought, as far as pigmentation goes.
Exactly.
So so I don't get it. I've never met a person of colour who's wanted to take over my life. I've never met a person of colour who has wanted to take over. I don't know, Dominic. I don't even know what to say. I don't even know where to go with it.
Apart from President Obama, of course, that was a joke.
Take over the world. I know, but he didn't. Until he lost the plot, he was doing really great things, wasn't he? And now
he was absolutely doing some wonderful things.
With the colour of his skin. That's got nothing to do with the colour of his skin. He's just turned out to be a bum politician like the others eventually, sadly.
Absolutely.
But nobody can blame the colour of his skin for that. He's just turned out to be a dick. But things have changed, certainly. Young people, I don't see racism the way I used to, and I certainly used to see it a lot. The both of us did growing up. But I grew up in a multiracial environment. When I went, from being right back to what American listeners would call kindergarten, it was multiracial for me. I've always been in multiracial society, but of course I've witnessed and experienced racism, the same as I've witnessed homophobia. And I'm not going to get into homophobia. We're talking about racism and cultural differences. So of course, I've experienced it, but not so much now. But I think people now, the danger is now, because of immigration, etc., the danger is resentment, and there is a difference. But again, that's down to politics and how we handle immigration, and how also a lot of this is to blame. The blame lies with journalism as well, and how things are handled and how things are reported. Because, of course, I called him a dick. Obama, sorry, she's just asking me if I did. I mean, obviously we don't swear much now on the show, but he is. But when journalism gets really poor, and they start misquoting facts, and they start telling you that your country is being invaded by a population of people who aren't the same as you, who want to take over and who want to invade you, which is not true when you consider that America is simply based, is a country full of it. It's built on immigration. It wouldn't be there if it wasn't for immigrants. Then to say that you are racist about immigrants is absurd. You wouldn't exist if it wasn't for immigrants. So
exactly, because the only true Americans, even the people that were born here, the only true Americans are the Native Americans, you know, and I've seen one in the past 15 years.
Well, I mean, because the white man did a great job of wiping them out, you know. So if anybody is the invader, if anybody is the racist invader, it is everybody listening to this who is not Native American, okay? The white man came along in an incredibly racist fashion. Well, not just the white man, but in an incredibly racist fashion, did their best to wipe out the natives of America. Which has always dumbfounded me. I remember this is how old I am. I remember years ago watching an episode of the Jerry Springer Show, and these, what can only be described as rednecks, these guys that look like they'd lost their banjo, talking about African Americans being incredibly racist and saying, you should all pack your bags and leave this country. You have no business being here. They were 3 feet away from using the N-word. But also talking about other, with anti-Semitic everything, and I couldn't believe that this audience, nobody in this audience stood up and said, "Well, excuse me, if you're saying that if you weren't born in this, if you're not from this country because you weren't born here, your roots aren't here, you should leave, then pack up your bags, because you clearly, looking back, judging by their surnames or whatever, you clearly are of Dutch ethnicity, origin. So none of you belong here. So go home, pack your bags, and get the hell out of the country." And nobody picked up on it. Nobody said anything. They were all just too busy throwing, hurling insults at each other across the room. And obviously, quite rightly, a lot of African American people jumping up and being offended. And of course, they had a right to be offended. They were being called, they were having racism thrown at them, racist comments, etc. But nobody picked up on this idea that every single person in that room was an immigrant. Nobody had a right to be there on the basis of these men's arguments. And I just find it absolutely absurd.
And this is exactly why, the current arguments against immigration are just so ridiculous. But I kind of want to rewind it a little bit back to Selma, because what I thought was interesting also no, it's fine. It's a talk show. One of the things that I found was very interesting this week was the level of response to the fact that the Ferguson they had declined to prosecute officer. His name has slipped my mind. The police officer, I think it was Darren Brown, who was involved in the death of Michael. Oh gosh, his name has escaped me too.
Yeah, he surprised me.
Michael
I didn't know
Brown.
Going back there.
Yeah, the police they've declined to prosecute Darren Brown because they've actually said that there isn't a case to answer, and given some of the facts that came out about that Michael Brown took the officer's gun. Tried to take the officer's gun. I mean, if you try and take a police officer's gun and you end up getting shot, I mean, it's a concern, isn't it, really? Because, I mean, I would never, in an altercation with a police officer, raise my voice, never mind going and get their gun, or try to get their gun.
I mean, I don't know much now about that. I mean, because you're taking me back out, but I mean, if you try to take a police officer's gun and you got shot, then I'm kind of thinking it's your own fault, really. I mean, who in the right mind would try and take an officer's gun? That's that's insanity. I mean,
well,
unless
it's
you have mental health.
isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
So
we don't have armed police here, but I mean, if I was over in the States and a police officer pointed a gun at me and said freeze, I wouldn't be moving. I certainly wouldn't be trying to take the gun out of their hand.
Exactly. And if a police officer with a gun says jump, you say how high. I mean,
absolutely,
I totally agree that there have been some instances of police officers overstepping the mark, but I don't think that this was one of them. However,
no.
I was quite heartened this week that leaders of I hate this terminology as well, African American. I was heartened this week that the black community said that they were praying for peace, rather than saying, "Oh, let's go and riot again," and blah blah blah. The response. I'm not saying it was just because it was the anniversary of Selma, but I was actually quite heartened that they had responded in that way rather than making threats to the officer. And I don't know, it just kind of, it was timely that it was around the anniversary of Selma, for me anyway. Yeah,
well, absolutely, and of course, I mean, if you get to a point where you still think violence is helping, then it is tragedy that you've got to a point of an anniversary and you've learned nothing. Because if we are at a point where we still have to do something more than raise our voices, then where are we going? We've got to use our voices and our votes. That's the point.
Absolutely, and I think that it's kind of imperative that we do that. I think we're forgetful when voting comes around. I think it's imperative to look back and see what the parties have actually done in their term of office before you vote for them again. But I think unfortunately most people vote with most people don't vote with their conscience, they vote out of anger, and that's a worry too. Because if you feel, this happens so many times. Look at England when the Labour Party, which is the equivalent of the Democrats, have been in power and they've not done enough, they give the Conservatives, which is what are they called over there? Yeah, they're called the Conservatives. We call them the Republicans and other things. But when one or other of the parties has not done enough, they forget about the history of what other things they've failed to do. They just kind of vote with their, with their anger, and I think that's a worry too.
And also, they don't vote historically either. They vote on the day of what they're being told. It's like, oh yes, they're saying they'll do this today, let's vote for them. They don't look back at what they did last time and go, hang on a minute, didn't they say this last time, and then screwed us completely. They just vote on the day. Oh yes, that sounds like a great idea. They're going to do this, or in desperation. And also, a lot of people don't vote. What we should do is what Australia does, and if you don't vote, you get fined. It's compulsory to vote, because so many people don't vote. The majority of people do not vote, and that's disgraceful. It's just not acceptable for that to happen. When you consider the devastation that's caused when these parties get into power and do what they do, the devastation that's happening in this country right now is appalling. It's terrifying. And then you find out that maybe 2/3 of the country haven't voted.
And don't you just love it when people complain and you say, who do you vote for? And they go, oh, I didn't vote Xander. Well, STFU. Don't complain if you didn't vote. It's a worry that people don't vote and then they still complain.
It is, but it's not even good enough to say, well, don't complain. It's a case of how dare you? How dare you not be responsible enough to vote in a country where families are starving, and you're saying, oh, I didn't bother, because for a fact somebody who didn't bother is doing more than surviving. They're okay, because I know for a fact that single mother with 3 children living below the poverty line got off her arse and voted. It's not just irresponsible, it's disgraceful for people not to go out and sensibly and informatively votes. It's just unconscionable. Even.
Absolutely. Well, that was our Hot Topic segment. If you just joined us, you're listening to Xandermonium. I'm Xander Gibb.
And I'm Tyhe Egar.
And we're going to do our phone-in now. So if you'd like to get in on the phone-in, the telephone number is 347-884-9061. That's 347-884-9061. And we're talking about infidelity. So according to Bus and Shackelford, it's estimated that roughly 30 to 60% of all married individuals in the United States, that is, will engage in infidelity. Now, these numbers are probably on the conservative side, considering that close to half of all marriages end in divorce. Well, that's straight marriages, of course. 2 to 3% of all children are the product of infidelity. Most of these are unknowingly raised by men who are not their biological fathers. DNA testing is finally making it easier to check the paternity of children.
That's scary. Infidelity is becoming more common among people under 30. It is believed this increase in cheating is due to greater opportunity and young people developing the habit of having multiple sexual partners before they marry. Although there are no definitive signs of cheating, in hindsight you will always find them. Some cultures adopt extreme measures to combat infidelity: female circumcision, allowing only limited contact between the sexes, and death as a punishment, while many other cultures do not see it as a serious marital problem. Men are more likely to cheat than women. Go on. It's just a bit scary. Well, the problem kind of other cultures, isn't it? As far as there's a huge problem here with the subculture of female genital
mutilation.
Castration, mutilation.
It's a worry,
which is terrifying. But it's a subculture as well, which is horrific.
Absolutely. So men are more likely to cheat than women, ain't that the truth? But as women become more financially independent, they're starting to act more like men with respect to infidelity, which in many cases is never discovered. Now, the initial decision to be unfaithful is rarely a rational choice. Instead, it's usually driven by circumstances and one's emotions. Most people are surprised by their own behavior at the start of an affair. Emotional infidelity, compared to just physical infidelity, can inflict as much, if not more, and make matters worse. Most indefinitely, infidelity even involves both physical and emotional betrayal.
Unfortunately, many people find a more suitable mate after they are married. Biological evidence indicates that long-term monogamy is difficult for most humans to achieve. Almost everyone admits to having fantasies that involve someone other than a spouse. What about you?
Yes, absolutely. What about you? Call us and tell us on 347-884-9061. That's 347-884-9061. So you told us at the foot of the show you've never been unfaithful, Ty. Wow, that's pretty something. I mean, gay people are actually seen to be more promiscuous than their heterosexual counterparts. Now, I don't know if that's a fair label, but obviously it's a generalization. But do you think that there is more infidelity in gay relationships than there is heterosexual, or do you think it probably balances out?
I don't know about infidelity, but if we are absolutely honest, let's just say, certainly we know for a fact through the 80s and 90s, certainly gay people are known to be supposedly, we're not supposedly, we were known to be far more promiscuous than heterosexual people. But that's only because I think personally, for one reason, we were always forced underground because of the way that society treated us, and two, we're just really good at finding each other to have sex with, and I think we didn't treat sex as some kind of a terrible thing that people did, behind closed doors, like some, Christian habitual, sin. We were just really good at it as well. As far as relationships go, I don't think we're more likely to be to commit to be. English language is not working for me tonight at all. Are we more likely to be to commit infidelity? I don't know. I don't think so. Are we? I don't remember our friends splitting up because they were unfaithful to each other. Are you rubbing your microphone, Xander?
No, I don't know. I really don't know what's going on, whether it's the phone line or it's Blog Talk, but obviously we will be getting over this.
I'm just making sure that you're not getting overly excited about infidelity, that's all.
Absolutely, absolutely not. Nothing could be further from the truth. So I wonder if anybody's going to be brave enough to call in and say that they've been unfaithful. Call us now on 347-884-9061. That's 347-884-9061. No, I think it's often sensationalized when celebrities are unfaithful, and when we find out about it, the tabloids are more than happy to kind of share that. I think it's a private thing. I mean, I've had people tell me before that they've been unfaithful. And then they expect you to keep that secret. I mean, that is such a burden to put on anybody, to say, look, I kind of, I was unfaithful, but don't tell anybody. I mean, I would rather not know. What do you think?
What, if somebody been unfaithful to me?
No. If someone told you that they'd been unfaithful to their partner, is that almost an unwanted burden? Do you really want to know that?
No, I don't. Because and I'll tell you why. Because it's not them wanting to it's them wanting to give you that burden because they don't want to carry it anymore. It's not them feeling guilty about their partner. It's them just feeling guilty about themselves, and they want to offload it on you. If they truly felt guilty, they would tell their partner, not you. They just want to offload that guilt onto somebody else, but they don't actually want to accept responsibility for it. They just want to offload it on you, and that means you've got to carry it around and not tell your friends. And what do you do about that? So if there's any of my friends listening, don't do that, because I will tell them, and I will tell you to get behind me, Satan, because you've no right to do that. What a terrible thing to do to a friend. I haven't got the guts to tell my partner that I've been unfaithful to them, but I need to offload this because I feel terrible. So therefore, I'm going to offload it onto you, my other friend, because I'm a really low person. No. And I don't, to be honest as well, I don't think we'll get anybody calling in because they'll be really worried that their partner will recognise the voice, or their ex will. Do you know what I mean? And then, because if you admit you've been unfaithful to one partner, what's to stop you being unfaithful to the next one? So
exactly.
I think in this, and in this situation, the chat room's just gone mental. In this situation, you're not going to get many people admitting it, because
I'm not going to mention names,
but once she'll do it again.
People in the chat room, one person in the chat room just admitted that they'd been unfaithful, and I asked did they say with the person afterwards, and they said no. Now, I think that quite often when somebody says, hey, I've been unfaithful, or I've done this, or I've done that, that is usually, the relationship usually ends as a result of that information kind of being shared. Another person said in the chat room, and again, I won't mention the name because I think some of these things are kind of like personal. That they never have been unfaithful unless you count online flings. So let me ask you, Tyhe, what do you consider being unfaithful? Because for some people, even kissing someone is being unfaithful. Is online sex being unfaithful? Is looking at pornography being unfaithful? What do you think?
Looking at online pornography isn't being unfaithful. Well, not in my book. I mean, if my partner is looking at pornography, bring it on. It might get me laid.
Right. But it saves you a job, dear, doesn't it? Let's face it.
But you shouldn't be thinking of having sex with your partner as a job, really. I mean, if it's becoming a chore, that relationship's kind of over, isn't it? But But if you're having an online relationship with somebody else, as far as I'm concerned, that's unfair. Being unfair, it's unfaithful, isn't it? Because you're emotionally sharing with somebody else other than your partner. If you're emotionally sharing or you're physically sharing with somebody else, that's infidelity. That's unfair. You're being unfaithful.
Right.
You're sharing emotional or physical a physical side of yourself with somebody else. That to me is being unfaithful. Why would I want to do that with somebody else? And if you feel you have to do that with somebody else, you need to do one of two things. You either need to communicate better with your partner, or you need to leave them because it's not working.
Right.
So that's my personal definition of infidelity. So,
because if you do feel the need to go and do things with other people, that's usually signifies you're with the wrong person, doesn't it? Let's face it.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I found out my partner was sharing, even online, as somebody was saying, on my online fling, but if my partner was having an online fling with somebody, and even if they'd never met them, it would hurt me. It would really hurt me that they were having an emotional connection with somebody else behind my back, but also felt that they were doing that. They had to do that.
Right.
Or they felt they needed that, which means they needed more than me. Which would also make me feel like I wasn't enough, which makes me feel inadequate, and I would never want anybody in my life that made me feel less than I am. So it hurts. Anything, it's going to hurt you. So that,
Absolutely.
But again, my definition.
Right, because everybody's definition is going to be different, isn't it? I guess it's a sliding scale of what people would consider an infidelity. Some people would only consider that that full-blown sex is an infidelity, whereas other people would think that a cuddle or a kiss was even an infidelity. I mean, I'm not surprised that people haven't called in because I think that most people are kind of like ashamed of this. And one of the people in the chat room said that they're not ashamed of it because they're not perfect. And you know what? I applaud that because, I think that people have been there,
hello, somebody's now. Somebody's asking questions about online swings. But as I said to you, right, I can't keep typing and talking, guys, because I'm really not good at multitasking. But it's again, I said this is my personal belief. But and talking about what Brad Pitt did was terrible. And because the whole point is it's what the other person's feeling. You've got to consider the other person's feelings. It's not just about your feelings. Right. It's about that other person. It's about the other person that you're cheating on. It's about the other person's emotions that you're damaging. You're hurting. Just because because I know what the next question is going to be is, well, if they don't know what they don't know won't hurt them. Well, that's not true. Because what you're doing behind somebody's back is it's still potentially cruel, isn't it? And because you're talking about Brad Pitt.
I would have respected Brad Pitt a lot more if he'd actually split with Jennifer before he started seeing Angelina. I would have respected him far more because it would have hurt, but it would have hurt far less. I think ending a relationship with someone is far better than being unfaithful to them. I really do.
Yeah, and I know somebody's saying, he didn't mean to meet the love of his life, but he did. Well, of course, I'm not saying that for 1 second he should have stayed in a relationship that he wasn't happy in, but to say that it was okay to cheat on his wife while he did check out that it was the love of his life is BS. I mean, please justify that to me, somebody. How is that okay? To break somebody's heart to make sure that yours is going to be in a better situation. You cannot justify that to me ever, because how long did it take Jennifer Aniston to get over that? And it's just not acceptable to me ever to do that. But of course, I'm not saying if you're in a relationship that doesn't work, of course you should get out of it. No, because on the other hand, on the other side of that coin, I'm saying to anybody who's in a relationship that's making them unhappy, of course you should leave it. If you've tried
Right.
everything, if you love that person and you've tried everything, you've tried communicating, you've said, this is how I feel, this is how you're making me feel, we need to change, and they refuse to change and they still keep treating you second class or whatever, then of course you should leave. I'm not saying for one second you should stay in it. But you cannot justify to me doing what he did or what somebody else would do in that situation, cheating on somebody, and then saying, well, it's okay to do that because I wasn't happy. BS. Sorry. BS.
Kathy just said in the chat room that she tries not to judge it, and I totally get that. But do you think that when people live their lives in the public eye, that there is more of a it's kind of more, what's the word I'm looking for? It's when someone lives their life in the public eye, it's more tempting to comment on it. Because if the person up the street leaves their husband for someone else, you're probably not going to say so much about it, and unless you're a gossipy old hag, like some people are.
Well, I wouldn't.
But it's more commentable, if that's even a word. If the people are famous that are involved.
Well, the only reason I'm commenting about it now is because it's been brought up in the chat room. A couple of my friends this happened to last year, and I made the comment. I made the comment to my friend, what you did was wrong. I'm not going to destroy you. I'm not going to put you against the wall and stone you to death. But I think what you did was wrong.
Right.
And that's it. What you do now between you and your ex-partner is your own business. What they did between them was what you're asking. But what I'm being asked about now is what I consider infidelity and what I think is wrong about that and the emotional response, and the emotional damage it causes. Clearly, as far as
absolutely.
I don't think we throw stones at each other in a room. Of course, I wouldn't comment about Mr. and Mrs. or Mr. and Mr. whatever up the road because I wouldn't know anything about it. And as I say, I don't want to comment about this because it's been brought up. But, as I say, I'm commenting about infidelity, and I don't think that's acceptable. If you're unhappy in that relationship, you end it. I don't think it's acceptable to willfully hurt somebody like that. Isn't acceptable.
You're right.
And I think it's cowardly as well. It's a cowardly thing to do because what it basically means is you don't have the balls to look somebody in the eye and say, I'm off. Because it keeps you safe as well, doesn't it? We're sharing the rent or the mortgage. This keeps me safe because I can still go home to you. You're there, but at the same time, I can go out and have fun. It's a very cowardly thing to do, and it's safe. But at the same time, you're really hurting the person you're with.
Yeah, I kind of think that it's obviously a lot harder when you're the person that's on the receiving end of all of that. If you're the person that's being cheated on, it's much harder than you. But what about the women that stay with men after they've been unfaithful? Like we talked about Hillary Clinton today. Look at the fact that she stood by her man after that public humiliation of the fact of what he'd done with Monica Lewinsky. There is a school of thought that these women are stupid that stand by their man, but other people think that that's what you really should do. And I think that in that situation, it must be a very difficult decision to make, But
that's a personal decision, isn't it? Do I love this person enough to try and work through this?
Right.
She made a decision in that sense. Did he only cheat the once? Do I believe he only cheated the once? If so, do I love him enough to work through this? Or do I want to leave him? She clearly thought, I'm going to stay with him. Did she stay with him because he was the most powerful man in the world? Or did she cheat? Who knows what their decisions were? Personally, I would never be able to trust a partner again who cheated on me, so I would be out the door.
Right.
Again, personal decisions.
But allegedly that was not the first time that had happened with them. So she'd obviously, well, I say obviously, if that's true, then she'd obviously accepted that before. Does that give people permission to cheat more, do you think? Do you think if you say, I forgive you, obviously part of that is, I forgive you, but don't do it again or I'll cut your balls off. But, do you think that the fact that you don't stop the relationship gives them license to do it again?
Personally, I think you've hit the nail right on the head, Xander. I think that's absolutely what you're doing. You say it's like staying in a violent relationship, and as I've said before on the show, I've disclosed quite a few things about me on the show over the past 2 years. But it's like being in a violent relationship. When you forgive them, you give them permission to do it again. And I think that's exactly what you're doing. You're saying, all right, I'll let you off this time, but don't do it again. And they think, well, whatever. I'll just do this again. You know what I mean? So I think absolutely you're giving them permission. And I know they say once a cheater, always a cheater. I'm sure that's not the case. I know that's not the case. I know there are people out there. Save your right for not phoning in. You could have had your say, but I know there are people out there who will have overcome this situation. No pun intended. And there's been a one-off episode, and they've got past it, and they've either done it themselves or they've been to couple counselling, and everything's fine now. And be it a male or female, or male, female, or other. And that's great, hunky dory. But I personally could not stay with a man who had cheated on me, and that always got. Joe's on one tonight. If you have a great partner, you love him, but you got drunk, and had sex at a Christmas party, it's still cheating.
I mean, I
don't
did,
really understand
and I'm not going to...
what the difference... But I don't really understand what the difference is.
I did. I'm not going to mention names, but I did forgive someone, and I actually wish I hadn't, because they did do it again. And I think that for me... I've always been a monogamous person when I'm in a relationship. I'm a big old slag when I'm not. No, not really. But I think that when you are monogamous and that is the agreement, when someone breaks that agreement, you do have two choices. You can either stay with them or leave them. But I do think if you stay with them, it does give them license to do it again, because you've accepted it once. It's like you're obviously... I actually think there is a weakness. I'm probably going to get lots of emails. Don't email me, because I really don't care. I think there is... It shows weakness. If you accept your partner back after they've been unfaithful to you, it shows weakness. I do agree that if you have kids to that person, then that changes the equation right away. It really does. But I don't know. I think, when a few people have said this throughout this thread, that it's kind of, it depends on the circumstances, and I think it really does. But the other thing that was said in the chat room is that about kind of not judging, and I kind of do agree with that. I mean, the only reason you will have a right to judge if you're the one that's been cheated on, and that's kind of what I think, really.
Do you know? And when I was talking about my friend who made this mistake, and a lot of her friends turned their back on her and made these terrible comments about her and said,
we want names, sweetie.
And I said, I deliberately posted a comment on Facebook, said, I'm out with my fabulous friend, blah, having a great time catching up, because I wanted these other people to know that I was out with her, because I just thought it was disgraceful, because as far as I'm concerned, now I said to her, I think what you did was terrible, and it was a mistake, and it's ended your relationship, but now, it's done. But as far as other people making judgments, then I'm like, hang on a minute. The only person that has a right to really make a judgment here is the person that was harmed, that was cheated on. It doesn't give everybody on the planet the right to queue up and start throwing names at you,
Right.
As friends, you should be supporting, saying, like, hang on a minute, I'm really sorry this has happened to you, and it's terrible, and what were you thinking, to the other person? But I don't think it gives everybody a right to pick up a stone and start throwing it.
Definitely not.
It's the choice, it's what's happened between those two people. I don't think then friends either should start making a list of who's going to be whose friend, If
your friend...
Then
it's doubly harder if you're friends with both of them. But I think your friend Blah, I'm considering she must be Danish. She's not going to be very pleased that you revealed her infidelity on the show.
Well, nobody knows who she is. Are you kidding? I mean, nobody will have a clue who I'm talking about. But
no.
It's a long, long time ago. It's a long, long time ago now. But it was just, it came to my mind because we're talking about this. But it's the point being, though, is that idea that everybody suddenly jumps on the bandwagon and thinks they have a right to say something, and I don't think they do. The only two people that have any real right to say anything are the two people, two damaged parties, because I think as well
exactly.
The person who because now I've said all that, I mean, the person who's cheated, you want to know, is like, right, well, hang on then, You know, why? Why did you feel the need? What was going on? And unless you really, you know, I mean, if you've had a relationship with somebody who everybody said you don't do this because they are a rat and they've done this time and time and time again, then serve you bloody right, man. You know what I mean? If everybody around you has told you that this guy or this woman is going to do this to you because they've done it to everybody else, then please don't come crying to me because you're an idiot.
Yeah, but you don't want people to say, "Oh, I told you so." Even if people have told you, I mean, sometimes you actually have to experience things to be able to kind of to be able to see what other people were saying was right.
Well,
you know,
only to a certain extent, Xander. Because if somebody said to you, "Don't buy that car; the brakes are broke, don't work," and then you fell off, and then you drove it into the side of your house, do you know what I mean? I wouldn't want you coming saying to me, "I've hurt my neck." Do you know what I mean? So for me, it works in the same way. But if
Tyhe, you really are one of those "I told you" people, aren't you? You are one of those.
I am. Yes.
I told you so.
I am.
Do you have an "I told you so" dance too, and a song to go with it?
Well, it actually depends on what mood you catch me in.
Absolutely. Well, we are coming to the end of the show now. I found that a very interesting discussion. I wish people would have called in, but I think people are a little afraid that we might eat them when they call. But I do hope. Well, it depends how attractive they are, of course. But I do hope that people will call in the future. So that was Xandermonium for today with myself, Xander Gibb, and my co-host, Tyhe Paul Egar. We will be back with you next week. Well, I'm not sure if Tyhe's back next week, but thanks to everyone who's made today's show possible. As I said, thanks to Tyhe for co-hosting. This week's show was sponsored by Big City Karaoke, #1 in the provision of karaoke services in the tri-state area, www.bigcitykaraoke.com. Thanks to everyone in the chat room. Thanks to Phil. Thanks to Kathy. Thanks to Joe. And thanks to all the guests. And thanks to you for listening and for your continued support. Don't forget to check out... I was just going to give you a website, but it's not up right now, is it, Tyhe?
It's not. Well, my God. So just keep following me on Twitter, and eventually when the website goes up, the world will know because they'll hear me shouting hallelujah. Can I get a witness?
Yeah, exactly.
So just follow me on Twitter for now, because there's no point doing anything else.
We will be back with you next week. UK listeners, don't forget that you can find us at 9 o'clock in the UK next Sunday. And we will be going to our new slot very soon of Saturday afternoons, 1 o'clock Pacific time, 4 o'clock Eastern time, and that will be 9 o'clock in the UK when UK goes over to a British summertime. My brain hurts from all of that. But for now, bye from me, Xander Gibb,
and goodbye from me, Tyhe Paul Egar.
Yes, we will see you next time. I'm just choosing some music to go out with. Let's have a look. Should we have a bit of Colton Ford to leave on, Tyhe? Do you reckon?
That works for me. Colton always works for me, as you well know.
Absolutely. So playing you out with a little bit of Colton Ford. We're not going to get into trouble for playing this because he is a good friend of ours. And this is called Take Me by Colton Ford. And we will see you next time on Xandermonium.
Xandermonium.
Bye-bye. I love you all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.